I know it shows on my device it's streaming. Does it show it on your side?
Yes, Judge. And I'm just confirming. Do you know what channel we're streaming on? Is it your personal channel, Judge?
Be my personal channel.
I'm guessing it just takes a little bit to show up, but I'm sure that I show that we are live on YouTube, Judge.
Okay. So then again, to clarify, you're not here representing the state in that capacity. You're here as witnesses. Mr. Banks, is that right? As a witness?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. So you may proceed your motion. So call your witness or argument, whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, Judge, I'll just, oh, hang on. I'll just jump right into my witnesses and I'll reserve argument for when all of my witnesses have testified, if that is okay with you.
Okay. Who's the first witness?
I'm going to call Ulysses Allridge first.
Mr. Aldridge, would you raise your right hand for me? You solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony you give in the cause will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Ulysses, can you spell your name for the court reporter?
ULYSSESALRIDGE.
And do you know why we're having this hearing?
Yes, to get this, to have my case recused.
Okay. And do you know what the reason is we're having this hearing?
I just felt like there was a bias against you from the other judge.
Do you want to go to trial on this case?
Yes.
And how long have you been wanting to go to trial?
Since the beginning.
And we spoke about going to trial before our court date on July 1st. Do you remember what our announcement was going to be?
No, I don't remember.
Where we were announcing ready for trial, correct?
Oh, yes.
And we discussed going to trial and being ready for trial before then.
Yeah.
And we met and actually prepped for trial before.
Yes.
And so after court on July 1st, we were set for trial on July 6th, right?
Right.
Have I ever told you anything about the judge before that, about like how she feels about me, or like, have I expressed any opinion about the judge prior to that to you?
No.
Okay. And so what was the first thing you said to me after you got out of the hearing?
That the judge didn't like you. I felt like the judge didn't like you.
And why did you think that?
It just seemed like rudeness, like she was rude to you, cutting you off.
And so, but you really do want to go to trial?
Yes, I do.
And you, when I told you, okay, so we had a conversation about your feelings about the judge. And on that, during that conversation, did I mention the motion to recuse, or was it a later conversation?
It was later. Yeah, you called me.
During that conversation, our entire conversation was really about preparing for trial, right?
Right.
For being ready on July 6th.
Right.
Right. And then we had a later conversation. Do you remember what that conversation was about?
That was when you called me back and we started talking about how I felt about the judge and your relationship.
Right. And I asked you, were you concerned about the judge not being fair to you? What was your response to that?
Oh yeah, I was scared that she might have been unfair.
And you thought she might be unfair because of what?
How she felt towards you.
And so when I told you that, I was feeling like we needed to file a motion to recuse, were you happy with that? Like you were disappointed, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to prolong the trial anymore, but yeah.
Because you want to go to trial and get your cases taken care of.
Of course, yes.
And when I told you that we had to delay it, I told you it was going to delay it, and I had no idea when we were going to go to trial then. Remember that?
Yeah.
But you made the choice to like when I discussed it with you, you agreed that we should file this motion to recuse.
Yes.
And that's because you're afraid of the judge, her attitude towards me would cause you to have an unfair trial.
Yeah.
Okay. That is all my questions of this witness, Judge Harle.
Well, specifically, Mr. Aldrich, what were the actions and the demeanor and or statements of the judge that made you feel that way?
I can't remember the exact statements, but there was a lawyer that went before her, and I felt like the lawyer was being rude to her, but was overlooked. And then my lawyer had another case before me, and it was just like she couldn't get a word in. Like she was just chopping her up. She didn't want to hear anything she wanted to say, even when she was trying to bring up another law, another rule up, and she was just dismissive of it and didn't want to hear anything that she wanted to say just about what seemed to me.
Okay, your case or another case?
The case before mine. It was a case before.
How about your case?
My case.
Anything specific about your case, about the actions, statements, or demeanor of the judge on your case?
Well, by that time, it was so aggravated with my lawyer that it just wouldn't have. She wasn't trying to hear anything she was saying. So.
Okay. So it was basically your perception she was angry at your attorney based upon your attorney's appearance previously on another case not involving you and your own case.
Yes. Well, not just angry, because I mean, it seemed like it was her, because there was somebody else before her, and that wasn't there,
Okay. And this, I assume, was on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I guess I have a couple more questions based on that, if that's okay, Judge Harle.
Yeah, it needs to be specific to his case. So go ahead.
Yes, I understand, Judge. This motion really, let me just ask him a couple questions. So based on your observations of the judge, had you had any interactions with the judge before that hearing?
No.
This was your first time appearing on this case, even though this case is very old?
Yes.
Okay. And when you observed her interactions with me, what were your feelings?
That she doesn't like you.
And when you felt that she doesn't like me, what did that cause you to fear going to trial in front of her?
Yes, with you for sure. Yes.
Okay.
I felt like already in the water.
Okay. So you're sitting here right now, you're afraid of going to trial in front of her with me as your lawyer.
Right.
And you're afraid of that because you don't think she's going to be impartial towards this case.
Right.
And her demeanor might influence the jury against you.
Right.
Like the way that she was reacting to me, and the way that her attitude towards me, you felt could potentially be a problem in a jury trial.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. And that's all my questions now, Judge.
Okay, next witness.
I'll call James Lloyd.
Hello, Judge. How are you?
Try to stay with us in one location.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Judge. The connection here in Kendall County is kind of bad right now.
It's okay. Would you raise your right hand for me?
Yes, sir.
You do solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony to give in the cause will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. You can lower your hand. You may proceed.
James, go ahead and state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
First name is James. Last name is Lloyd. Lloyd for last name.
And so I'm going to ask some background questions. When did you first start working for Judge Uzamba?
I started working with her March 28th of 2019.
And you and I met soon after that.
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about what your observations were between March when you started and before you left her on January 21st? Kind of just tell us, like, in the beginning, how things were.
And in the beginning, I mean, it was quite chaotic. I mean, she had just let go of her previous court coordinator, and I was there, of course, trying to get everything together, trying to get attorneys to do cases in that court because they did not want to take any cases in there. And Stacy, of course, was one of the main ones that actually wanted to take cases there. And for a while, she was really handling a lot in that court for Judge Uzumba during that time.
And at a certain point, did things start happening that made you think that Judge Uzumba might have some problems with me?
It was a couple of months after Stacy would, of course, if she challenged the judge on a certain thing, it became an issue. Usually if attorneys challenged the judge, especially in her instance, they were on her list of not a good thing. And it just seemed like it just made things difficult for her.
And, but I was still willing to take cases in there, you remember?
Yes, you were. And you still did take cases in there. You did.
And do you know why I was still taking cases in there?
Well, you and the judge had a good rapport at one point, and I mean, no, I had to beg attorneys to take cases, and some of them wouldn't do it for me. But Stacy, of course, did. She would definitely take the cases. So
I was doing it for you.
You were doing it for me, yeah.
And so let's talk about January 21st, 2020. Do you remember that day?
I do.
Okay. So just go ahead and tell the court what your observations were that day.
That day, Stacy had a case that was going to plea for one of her clients. I, of course, was very sick. I actually had the flu, and I was working there at the time through it. And Stacy was there from the morning until about 6:30 or 7. At the time, Judge was doing her compliance hearings, and she just kept shuffling through Stacy's case, having her wait all day with her client to take the plea. And when Stacy told her that she had to go, and this is like after 5 o'clock, Judge Uzumba got upset and was like, you know what, if you have to go, we can just reset it. And Stacy was like, no, I really want to take this plea. I've been here all day. And Judge got upset. And so she handed me the file, and, you know, I told her, you know, Stacy wants to stay, we'll do it. Usually in these instances, we've had plenty of times where she said, you know, reset the case, and we end up taking the plea anyway. It wasn't an issue with staying late because we were known for staying late throughout the week. So it was just because it was Stacy, and that was the issue. And once we did take the plea, and keep in mind, I'm still sick, me and the court reporter, she took us back there, and she was very upset with us. And she's just like, when I tell you to do something, do it. And I was like, you know, we were just confused because we didn't have an issue with staying late because we always stay late in that court. And of course, you know, she began to say some other things to me, and, you know, I just really wasn't having it. And so she finally released me, and I stormed out. And on the following Monday, I quit that court. So.
Thank you, James. I'm sure that was hard to relive a little bit.
Yeah.
So based on all of your observations of her interactions with me and your personal knowledge from working for her, do you think she has an actual bias against me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, James. That's all my questions, Judge Harle.
Okay. So who are you working for now, James?
I work for Nicole Bishop. I'm in the Kendall County District Attorney's Office. I'm a legal clerk there, like legal clerk here now.
Okay. Well, tell her hi for me.
I will.
Absolutely. What's his name? Guy used to be my prosecutor. Isn't he the first assistant?
Nick Socius.
Nick. Yeah, Nick.
He's a family violence prosecutor here. He does the sexual assaults and the family violent cases here.
Okay. Well, tell him hi.
Oh, yes, sir. I will.
Tell him we don't miss him a bit.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. Take care.
You too, Judge. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
No problem.
Next witness.
Judge Harle, I call Travis Banks.
Okay. You solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony you're giving the cause will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Hi, Travis. Can you state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Travis Banks, Travis. First name Travis, last name Banks, Banks.
Okay, Travis. So I'm going to talk to you about two different dates with Judge Uzama. I'm going to talk to you about January 21st, 2020 and March 2nd, 2020.
Okay.
So on January 21st, 2020, where were you assigned?
If it's the incident you guys just spoke of, I don't know that I may have been just assigned to County Court 2. I don't recall my time with James really overlapping though.
Okay, but you remember that event.
I remember an event. I think my notes say it was around the 24th, but I heard the description from James. And so, and on this date, I think, I think that we were in trial and she was holding these compliance hearings throughout our trial. Stacy came in to approach the judge during these compliance hearings. The judge kept hearing more and more compliance hearings, even though she could have easily moved on to Stacy's case, and kept Stacy, waiting for her throughout the day. And eventually, at the end of the day, she never allowed Stacy to address the court, and basically was just going to reset her case. I guess I can wait for another question, but that's the gist of it. She was trying to get some relief, politely approaching the court, waited all day. The judge just kept pushing her off, and by the end of the day, after 5, she still didn't get to address the court.
And I thank you for saying I was doing it politely. My demeanor was polite towards the judge during all of those incidences, correct?
That's correct, Stacy.
And so we'll move on to March 2nd, 2020. Can you tell us what happened on March 2nd, 2020?
So March 2nd, that was a day when there was a trial docket. We were ready to go to trial. Whenever there's a trial docket, there are many trial cases, and throughout the morning, defense attorneys are to come to court and announce for trial. Well, I believe Stacy sent me a text message. She was on another docket. This was back when we were still doing in-person dockets. So she was at another docket at another location. And she said she would be on her way as soon as she was done with that docket. As a courtesy, I approached the judge and I said, Judge, Stacy texted me. She's at another docket, but she'll be here when she's done. And the judge, told me to tell Stacy that, if she didn't get there ASAP, that she would throw Stacy in jail and with her client. And I did convey that message. I thought it was a little bit inappropriate. I was kind of reluctant to convey that message. I didn't think it was my place to be telling a defense attorney that the judge would throw them in jail, but I felt like she needed to know that if that's what the judge was going to do.
And I don't know if you remember, but do you remember if my client, she had any reason to even put my client in jail?
No, I don't think there was any other reason. The reason I say that is because I do have a list of some of these situations, and I wouldn't have put it on that list if there was a valid reason to be throwing people in jail.
Sorry, didn't hear you.
I wouldn't have noted this incident on my list of I call it improper incarcerations or threats and so that's why I put it on that list. I don't think there was any reason to throw the client in jail on that.
Okay, so was the client on bond or in custody?
I don't recall that, and I didn't take note of that.
And Judge, and as an officer of the court, I can answer that question if you would like me to.
Okay.
My client was on bond and he was on time that day. So there was absolutely no reason for her to even threaten him to throw him in jail.
Okay, and was this said in front of the client from the bench?
I would have to say I don't recall, and I didn't take a note of that. I would expect the client would have been in the courtroom because the judge requires the clients to be in the courtroom on trial day. So to the extent that the judge was speaking loud enough that others in the court could hear it, I would expect the client to have heard it.
So it was from the bench?
Yes, it was from the bench. I do recall I was talking to the judge on the bench.
Okay.
And Travis, did you go and talk to anyone at the DA's office about what happened that day as well?
I think I talked to my chief, the misdemeanor chief, and I just kind of went over it, and because it just seemed so odd and irregular, and something. I just felt a little bit like it was improper for the judge to be asking me to do that. And I, kind of felt like I was doing it as a courtesy, just to kind of convey these messages.
Did you think it was improper for her to even threaten me with throwing me in jail?
Yes, I didn't think there was any legal basis to make that threat, and that's why I put it in I noted it down in my list of similar issues and incidents.
And so based on all of your observations of her interactions with me and your personal knowledge from working in her court, do you think she has an actual bias against me?
I would hesitate to speculate about what's going on in someone's mind, but just from what I've seen, I think a bias would be an explanation for the way that she behaves towards you.
Thank you, Travis.
So what happened on that case ultimately, if you recall, Mr. Banks?
I'm trying to remember exactly. I don't think we went to trial. I don't think we went to trial on any case that day, because I only went to trial on one case when I was in that court, and it was, I think, in February. So no cases went to trial on that date, on that docket.
So that was a trial docket, not a situation where, I don't know how she runs her court. So it was a trial docket only. There would not have been a plea that day if some kind of resolution was reached.
She does. So whenever she would have a trial docket, there would also be other cases that could potentially be resolved. I think she would try to kind of have everything resolved by 10:30 or as early as she could, so she could start the trial. But there would definitely be other matters on the docket other than the trial cases.
Well, I guess my question specific to this case is, do you recall when Stacy showed up, did the case get resolved? How was she treated? Was there further threats made at that time? Do you remember?
I don't recall that.
And Judge, I can tell you what happened.
Well, let's get through with the witness first.
Okay. I have no further questions of Travis.
Okay, and lastly, just for my benefit, what was the purpose of the list compilation?
Just because some of these things seemed irregular, and it happened just frequently. And I mean, that she would make these threats, and I didn't see all of them personally. Many were just relayed to me, and I only noted ones that I saw personally.
So what happened to the list?
I still have it. There's only three incidents that I ultimately wrote on the list. Two of them are the ones we discussed today.
Okay, but I mean, nothing.
No, it wasn't for.
Never transmitted to anybody for.
No, it was kind of, if it had, say I eventually wound up with 10 items on that list, maybe I would have said, hey, maybe we need to see if we can take some kind of action, but it kind of fizzled out, I guess.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything further for this witness, or is he excused?
He's excused. Thank you, Travis.
You're welcome.
And Judge, just to answer your question about that case on March 2nd, my law partner ended up, after I received that text from Travis, my law partner went to the court because she was in the courthouse handling her own cases. And she went to the court and got a dismissal on that case. The prosecutors dismissed it.
Okay, did she have any interaction with the judge?
No.
Okay. So your next witness.
That is all of my witnesses, Judge. I just have argument left. Do you have any questions for me before I start argument? Do you want to?
No, your case. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to rehash the arguments that I made in the motion. My arguments, are there for you in writing, but I'm going to highlight the things that I think are really important. The first thing I'm going to address is the timeliness of the motion, because I feel like that may have been a concern. In that
if it was not timely, I wouldn't have given you a hearing, so you don't need to worry about that.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Thank you. A motion for recusal requires that we identify grounds in 18B of the civil statute on the motion to recuse. And I believe that there are two grounds that apply in this case. The first one is the judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. And the second one is that the judge has a personal bias or prejudice concerning the subject matter or a party. There is a case called Burkett out there on the impartiality that states, in determining whether a judge's impartiality might be reasonably questioned so as to require recusal, the proper inquiry is whether a reasonable member of the public at large, knowing all the facts in the public domain concerning the judge and the case, would have a reasonable doubt that the judge is actually impartial. I think, given the information that you've heard today, Judge, and other people's observations, that there's certainly a question as to whether or not the judge can be impartial when it comes to me. And then as far as bias or prejudice, there is a Supreme Court case that says what matters is not the reality of bias or prejudice, but its appearance. And even though I think that in the testimony you've heard, there's evidence of actual bias, the appearance of bias or prejudice, which is what my client observed during the proceedings where he saw me interact with the judge, is all that's required for a recusal. And that's on Lideke versus United States. That quote comes from that Supreme Court case. In this case, my client had no knowledge of the prior conflict or history between me and Judge Uzamba. His concerns about the judge's lack of impartiality came from a 20-minute observation he made of the interactions between me and the judge. He became so concerned with that his first words were, "The judge hates you," when I talked to him after the hearing. And upon further conversation with him, he expressed that he was afraid to go in front of her for trial because he felt that her bias would taint the jury. And Judge, in order for me to feel confident that the judge's bias against me is not going to affect my clients, I'm kind of left with two options. And that's either that Judge Uzamba is recused from my cases and filing these motions and these requests for recusal, or that I can no longer represent clients who happen to be in county court too, which means I'm going to have to remove myself from the misdemeanor wheel to assure that I'm not going to accidentally get appointed to somebody in county court too. And I'm going to have to reject any clients who may want me as their attorney simply because their case is in county court too. I feel confident that, the testimony you heard today and what you heard from my client specifically on his case is enough to rise to the level of recusal for his case. But Judge, I did email you earlier a request for a standing order of recusal in county court too. And that is why I wanted you to hear from James and Travis so that you could hear that testimony and understand the difficult situation I'm being put in county court too, because this particular judge has such a strong bias that anyone who observes it sees it. And that bias is an actual bias, not just an appearance of bias. And it's based in real, it's based on real things that happened with her and I'm not really sure where all of that comes from, honestly, Judge. I've always tried to be incredibly respectful when it comes to her, and I was willing to take cases in her court when no one else was willing to. So I'm asking not only that you grant my motion to recuse Judge Uzamba on my client's cases, but that you allow me to have a standing order of recusal on all of my cases in county court too, because otherwise I'm just going to probably have to be filing these motions to recuse on every one of my cases regardless. And then I'm going to have to inform clients when they come to hire me and they happen to have a case in county court too about, about the history here and let them know that I'm not going to be able to take their case.
Okay, anything further?
I have nothing further at this time, Judge.
Okay, I only have the ability to deal with one case in front of me. There is no authority for a standing order. You're welcome to go talk to the local administrative judge down there to, I believe that was done by him on another individual who had a problem not in Judge Azumba's court, but in another court. And he just entered an order that any case going into that particular court would be transferred by rotation to another location. But that was outside my purview, and frankly, the case law and 18A and 18B don't allow a standing order of recusal. So it's either going to have to be a case-by-case basis, or go talk to whoever the local administrative judge is, who I believe is Judge Longoria at the moment, and see if he would offer you the same remedy he offered the other individual in another court. but that's between y'all. On this particular case, I will grant the recusal and order that it be transferred to another court. I can't imagine they have a rotation process down there, but if nobody will take it down there for whatever reason, then it'll come to me for assignment after they've exhausted the rotation process, and I'll assign somebody to take the case.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, good luck. I'll excuse the witnesses on this matter from this hearing, but anybody that's on my case for 2 o'clock, please stay on board. Don't leave. Okay, Miss Duke, Miss House, I'm sorry I was running late. You know, I'll give you the benefit if y'all want to be on YouTube. I'll just leave it running.